Welcome to the Energy Mix. I'm Robert Rapier, editor-in-chief of SHALE Magazine, and your host this week. Today, we welcome back to the show Matt Randolph, who is a senior executive at the oil company Sentinel Energy. He's also one of the leading educators of energy issues on TikTok. Matt, or Mr. Global as he goes by on TikTok, continues to grow his following, and his videos have been viewed hundreds of millions of times. He also has a YouTube channel that is growing rapidly and a Substack publication. Matt, thanks for joining us again.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So it's been almost a year, I think, since we last talked. I think it was August 2024, and some things have changed. I mean, we've got a new presidential administration. We've got some new energy policies. So let's start off with that. What are the biggest changes you've seen in the energy sector over the past, say, 10 to 12 months?
Oh, wow. Yeah, a lot has changed. I think probably the one thing I've seen the biggest change in isn't really around policy. It's just the technology is exploding in this industry. And even just a year later today, then I can't believe it's been a year since we talked, honestly.
Well, we did talk on your YouTube channel, so it hasn't been that long since we talked.
Okay.
But it has been since you were on this show. So yeah, we had a good discussion on your YouTube channel, I think earlier this year.
Yeah. Honestly, a lot of things have changed, but we expected a lot of that change. We're seeing upstream companies reduce CapEx. I think a lot of us expected that. We expected that the market was going to be a lot softer going into 25 and 26. I think it might have happened a little bit sooner than we expected, but, companies like Matador, Chevron, Conoco reducing their CapEx. I don't think that was largely unexpected. Technology is going crazy right now. I gave a speech the other day to the Oklahoma Mayors Conference. I was speaking to all the mayors in Oklahoma, talking about all the jobs we've lost in Oklahoma in the oil and gas space in the last few years due to technology. And a lot of those jobs lost during a time of prosperity of companies making record profits. So that's a huge issue in my state that we're going to be dealing with in the future. And I think probably one of the biggest changes is just all of the uncertainty moving forward. We don't seem to have a good, solid, clear-eyed vision of where we're going to be in a year or 2 years. There's just a lot of uncertainty in the market based on, the president's policies he tend to change from day to day. So that uncertainty creates a lot of pause, as you probably know, in the oil and gas industry. And it makes people kind of step back and say, what are we doing here? Because these people are risking billions of dollars and they need that certainty. And so a lot of uncertainty in the industry for sure.
So what are some of the energy issues you've been covering on your social media lately? I mean, you're very active. You're posting daily. You're writing on Substack. So what are the major issues you're talking about?
Well, obviously, we're talking about the Middle East a lot right now, which has pushed oil prices back up. This has been, for me, as someone who is expected to sort of do some forecasting and predicting of things like you do as well, this has been the most difficult time in my life to do that because of the uncertainty, right? We had oil dive down into the 50s. Now we're back up pushing to 80. It's just kind of been a wild ride the last few months, and trying to keep up with all of it's been kind of crazy. We've seen a lot of, I think we've lost, don't quote me, I think we've lost about 35 or 40 rigs since January. Several weeks, I think we're now 6 weeks in a row of losses of rig count. So it's been a roller coaster is what it's been. It's every day it's something new.
What do you think is driving that decline in rig count?
Well, I think, like I said before, some of that was planned. A lot of companies expected us to get into sort of an oversupply scenario moving into the second half of this year. I think that some of that was accelerated with all of the tariffs, and, we had the big stock market drop that came back and then dropped, and then just I really do think that uncertainty breeds a lot of this. And I also think that, sorry, I had a phone call. Did that mess you up?
No, no.
Okay. I I also think that, for the most part, companies sort of saw this coming. And for a while, I thought, man, the oil and gas industry's getting better at forecasting and laying down and slowing down quicker as to not create more oversupply. And then I'm started thinking, well, they've lived through a previous Donald Trump administration. They kind of know his style and how he does. So maybe they were just better prepared because of that. But it really feels like the industry is slowing down much faster than we have historically.
Yeah, I was looking at, uh-oh, I think we lost him, Callum.
Yeah, it looks like it. It's all right. We
All
were
right.
kind of in the middle of a question there. So
All right. Yeah, I'm going to pause right there. We'll get him back.
there we go.
Can you hear us okay, Matt?
Yeah, I don't know what happened there. It might have had something to do with that phone call I got.
Okay. So, all right, Callum, I'm going to go back to the question that I was just about to ask. Okay. Yeah, this morning I was looking at oil production numbers, and I see that we are still in record territory. I was kind of on the fence about whether we'd set a production record this year, but I thought if we do, it's not going to be a big one. And we are less than 3% above where we were a year ago. And so the growth has substantially slowed and looks like it's flattening out. And, I don't know where we go from here, but I would bet that production is lower, 2 years or 3 years from now than it is right now. I think we're starting to flatten out. And I think probably oil companies are thinking that way as well. What's your view on that?
I agree. I've been looking at that a lot. And sort of the question I had was we had such a big head start this year. Those first couple of 3 months of 2025, we were producing so much more than we were the first few months of 2024. And I thought, well, we got such a big head start, like we're really going to have to lose a lot of production to not set a record this year. And so right now I'm thinking, yeah, we set a record, but we do it with production declining because we're so far ahead. And that's what I think will happen. Of course, that was all before this Iran thing popped off and now oil prices are jumping up. I don't expect, it's just me, but I don't expect oil companies to just go out and stand up a bunch of rigs because of what's happening in the Middle East right now. I think they proceed with a very cautious approach. I think we continue to see production declines. Definitely think in 2026, there's no chance we set a record unless these oil prices we're seeing right now somehow continue due to a prolonged conflict in the Middle East.
Right. So, yeah, I'm just looking right now at the EIA numbers cumulatively through 6/14. So through last week, we are 2.6% ahead of where we were a year ago. So a little bit higher, but not a huge jump. Definitely has flattened out in recent months. So President Trump's energy policies, he's been in office for about 5 months. He's made a number of energy policy announcements. How are his unleashing American energy executive orders affecting the oil and gas industry? What are you seeing? Has anything affected your company?
No, not really. I think his economic policies have had a much larger impact on the industry than his energy policies. I like what I'm hearing from the administration around nuclear energy. I like the push for nuclear. But you can come out and strip away a bunch of regulations and stuff. That's not going to change what companies do on a day-to-day basis. They're not just going to stop what they're doing. Anything they were doing to meet prior regulations is already embedded in their business, and it's not something they change. So that's not something that's going to drive a ton of new exploration or anything. Maybe the biggest thing from a tariff policy are the steel tariffs. That's something I'm pretty concerned about. That adds a significant cost to the drilling and completion of new wells, which is our biggest contributor, obviously, in the United States. So I honestly think it's the economic policies and all this tariffs and all this stuff has had more impact on the industry than his actual energy policies.
So we mentioned the Middle East a couple of times. I don't know if you're up to date on the latest, what's going on, but Explain, I recorded my first TikTok yesterday in a long time just to
Saw that.
explain what the situation was with Iran. But explain to the listeners, what's going on over there and why is it important?
Well, the reason it's important for the oil and gas industry is, to me, the biggest threat is the Strait of Hormuz. About 21% of the world's oil flows through that strait, out of the Persian Gulf into the Gulf of Oman, depending on what direction you're going. If something happens in there, that is the time when, in our history, we've heard of very hyperbolic, crazy predictions about oil going to $200 or $300 and gas being $10 or $15. That is the one thing that could actually cause some of those scenarios to play out. And even then, I don't think we reach those hyperbolic predictions from the past, but you could definitely see massive inflation in oil prices and gas prices with these things happening in the Strait of Hormuz. Fortunately, it hasn't happened yet. The other night, we had apparently a couple of ships collided. They thought there might have been an attack in the Gulf of Oman. I'm still a little bit sketchy on that myself about what actually happened there, but that's really the big thing. Iran is a big oil producing nation, and they're at war in the Middle East, and that always drives oil prices up, regardless of what the market looks like fundamentally. It's just a thing. At the end of the day, I tell people, there's the price of oil is set by traders. These are humans that are reacting to what's happening, and at the same time, they're also trying to figure out how to make a buck on it. And you have to, and so trying to forecast what they're going to do in these situations is difficult, but it's easy to say it drives oil prices up. I think it's $77, $78 today. And if you think about it, fundamentally, what's different in the market today than was a week ago when it was $60?
Right.
Not really anything fundamentally different. It's all this tension in the Middle East.
There's a fear premium there.
Yes.
So, okay, we need to take a quick break right there. And then after the break, I want to talk about some of the economic challenges facing energy companies despite the administration's pro-energy stance. So we'll be right back after the break. I'm Robert Rapier with this week's guest, Matt Randolph. Okay, our next segment is 7 minutes. Let me pull that up. So yeah, these questions. So we might get into here. I've told people before that oil companies. Oh, my wife is in the driveway. I'm going to tell her to come in. So, all right. Dog probably will start yapping in just a second, but at least she's got a chance to come on in at the break here. So I'm going to talk about oil and gas companies. I always talk about how Trump's desire for low oil prices is mutually exclusive with his desire for booming oil production, and that oil companies actually fared way, way better under Biden. Now, I always caveat that and say, it's just because oil prices and gas prices were so much higher, and that's what makes them money. So we'll hit that. Let me get her in here real quick. I don't know if we had anything else to say about the Middle East. I did have a question about misconceptions, and I'm going to drag down into this section. So, yeah, she just shut the door, so I'll give her a second to come on in. All right, we are paused. So just if that doesn't sound like he's going to bark.
That's it.
All right.
Taking a day off.
Yeah, now looks like he's gonna not bark. Okay, so I think we can get going here. All right. Welcome back to the Energy Mixx Radio. I'm Robert Rapier with this week's guest, Matt Randolph. Matt, one of the things that I think some people might find odd is that Trump has very pro-energy policies, but oil and gas companies are struggling. Stock performance is down. Now it has spiked over the conflict in the Middle East, but projects are being delayed, and as you noted, rig counts down. What's your take on the disconnect between pro policies and market performance?
I think he wants the best of both worlds, and it's not something that's exclusive, obviously, to Republicans. Democrats do the same thing. They want the best of both worlds. So he wants to be pro-energy. There's a lot of money in the oil lobby that goes to the Republican Party, but he also wants to deliver low gas prices and low oil prices to make it more affordable for his voters who just don't happen to be oil executives, right? So I think he just wants the best of both worlds. I think he understands that low oil prices don't mean we're going to, drill baby drill. But I think he also understands that it doesn't matter because he can make the argument that it's happening even if it's not, right? And so people will assume that we're more energy independent and that we're drilling more, even though we're not, if gas prices are lower. That's what I think.
So what's your official prediction? Have you made a prediction on production record this year? I didn't make one this year, but I think at this point, I think we're going to be on track to set a new production record. But I'm like you, I don't see it again next year, given the flattening. We'd have to drop off a fair amount in the second half of the year, which is possible. But the oil price is higher. I don't really see that happening. But how about you? What do you see?
We do. We have to drop a lot of production to lose. I believe we'll set the record during a time where oil production is declining, which is kind of odd. I don't know that that's ever happened. Also, I noticed the EIA is predicting we're going to average 13.7 million barrels a day this year, even though that hasn't happened once this year. So I think they're going to miss that by a long shot. We'll probably come in at, I don't know what you're thinking. I'm thinking maybe 13.4, but no way would be 13.7.
Yeah, year to date, daily average is 13.464. As I said before, that's 2.6% higher than last year, which was 13.119 through this time last year. So, we'd have to drop off probably 3%, or more than that in the second half of the year to not set a record. And I don't really see that happening.
Yeah, we'll have to have a pretty significant crash. And with all of this stuff happening in the Middle East right now, I just don't see it happening.
So this is a question that I got on TikTok, and you touched on it before, but what tariff policies are affecting you the most? Are you actually seeing an impact yet, or have things been delayed and so forth, and it's not really hitting you yet?
So it's not really hitting us yet. We do have some things we purchase because we have invested in some technology that's we use some AI and some other stuff and some well site monitoring. We haven't seen a huge impact of that yet. We haven't purchased a lot of steel or a lot of pipe in recent months. So that's really the main reason we haven't seen it. I've heard that it takes time for those tariffs to be realized in the market from a retail perspective. I do know that the steel tariffs are impacting, companies that drill a lot of new wells. It's definitely impacting them because they're already seeing those tariffs. And I've read anywhere from adding, $80,000 to $160,000 on a new drill, which that's a significant amount of money, right? So I say the steel tariffs are definitely impacting, but with so much more money now being invested in technology, I suspect that will impact that side as well.
So you mentioned something I'm curious about. You mentioned that you guys use AI, and I talk about AI a lot, and I talk about the demand for electricity and how that's going to translate into more demand for gas. So AI definitely impinges on the energy sector. But you said you use AI. How do you use AI in your company?
So we built a data mining tool. We actually got a gentleman from the University of Stanford to help us build a data mining tool, and it uses AI, and it gathers up all of the information you can find about, like, say you can pick a 5 square mile area on a map, and you can plug that map into this data mining tool, and it will collect all of the production information, all of the geologic information, all of the data related to any oil and gas operation in that area historically. And it can extrapolate all that data, and it can tell you where the reserves are in that field that are left behind. That's one of the things my company does is we go look for a lot of left behind reserves in old wells and recomplete them. And it'll literally tell you, go to this well, perforate this zone, frack it. That's the best spot on the map. And it's really, it's an awesome tool that just collects all the data for you that it would take a normal person months to collect all this data. It can do it for you in about 10 minutes. And it is a very expensive piece of technology, but it is fascinating in the things it can give you. And it's much better than using like old well logs and all the things we used to do back in the day. So it's a really cool piece of technology. And we're a small company. So in my mind, it's like, man, if we have this, I can't imagine what Exxon has. Like they probably have something that just would blow my mind even more. But that's just one of the ways. Another way is well site monitoring, fluid levels in tanks, spill detection. We use AI and technology. We have a natural gas plant that is completely unmanned. We use AI there. So we actually are beginning to use it in a lot of facets of the operation.
Excellent. That is fascinating. So we will take a quick break right there and be right back with Matt Randolph on the Energy Mixx Radio Show. All right. Next segment is 5 minutes. I keep pulling down. I've got a question in my pocket here that in case we run short that I'm going to ask, but I'm going to pull that down again. All right, going to pivot to renewables and ask about that under the administration. Okay, 5 minutes. Here we go. Welcome back to the Energy Mixx Radio. I'm Robert Rapier with this week's guest, Matt Randolph. Matt, let's talk about renewable energy under the new administration. There have been a lot of changes there. What changes have you seen that are really affecting renewable energy development? And are you seeing changes in corporate energy strategies as a result?
There is, significant targeting of the subsidies that were, allotted in the Inflation Reduction Act that was passed. I don't know that they've managed to get rid of those yet. I think it's in the budget bill that is, up for a vote right now. I think that probably has a significant impact on renewable energy. There was a massive, I think it was Ørsted, massive offshore wind project that was shut down recently a few months back, and they just last week came back and let them resume operations. I'm not sure what exactly happened there, but this administration is not at all friendly to renewable energy, and that's unfortunate because I think personally I think we need all forms of energy we can harness, because we're moving into a period where, as you know, energy demand is going to grow faster than it's grown in our lifetimes. And they make these decisions. The Biden administration, they made their decisions based on, the climate change debate. And I feel like this administration also makes these decisions based on that debate and not on just how much energy are we going to need. And to me, that's what's important. How much energy are we going to need? And I think a lot of times that gets forgotten when these different presidential administrations are sort of targeting types of energies to fuel their base and the misconceptions their base have about different kinds of energy. I think we need all kinds of energy. We just do, because energy demand is growing rapidly. So they're definitely not friendly towards the renewable energy sector for sure.
Right. So let's talk about energy independence. You and I have both educated people about energy independence and what that means and where we are. So I don't think the EIA has released this year's numbers yet, but this is about the time they release them. Mm-hmm. Where do you think we stand at this point, and what does energy dominance really mean?
I think our energy independence is still growing. I honestly don't know practically how important it is. I mean, there's some national security implications, but I believe it's still growing. I think We were about just a little under 10 quadrillion BTUs surplus last year, if I'm remembering correctly.
Yeah, the
I'm
previous report, I think, was about that. I think I'm with you. I think it will grow. I think the numbers we're about to get are where we were in 2024. And I
Mhm.
think that probably grew.
Yeah. And, a lot of things contribute to that. The natural gas production will contribute to that, oil, renewable, all of it. Even the production of ethanol contributes to that. A lot of people don't realize the largest renewable energy source we have is ethanol. People wonder if it's wind or solar. It's neither. It's ethanol. It's like 62% of our renewable energy. It counts towards that. So it will grow. But, practically speaking, how does that affect you and I on a daily basis? I just don't think it does. And, there's no benefit to any individual American that we produce more energy than we consume, other than we can say we're energy independent, and that's cool. And of course, there's national security implications. We can leverage that energy. But as far as saving us money or doing anything great for us in our pocketbooks, no, it's just not a thing.
Right. I tell people the same thing. And I have to explain to them, or I generally ask people, what do you mean by energy independence? Because if you mean we don't import oil, we've imported oil for, 100 years,
Yeah.
close to that probably. So we've never been energy independent in that we don't depend on anyone else. But yeah, in the last 5 years, we have produced more energy than we've consumed. And that's changed. I think the one practical significance is, and people have asked me, what if something happens and the, Strait of Hormuz is shut down? So, well, our refiners can switch and they can refine the oil we produce. It's just not a good fit. It's not a good economic fit for them. It's not a good technical fit, but it can be done. So, if we had to refine our own oil and stop relying on imports, we could do that. So, okay, I'm going to take another quick break there, and we'll be right back with Matt Randolph on the Energy Mixx Radio Show. Okay, I was trying to talk till the end of the segment there. I knew we didn't have time for another question, so I'll pull this down. Let's see.
Weren't you from Durant?
Hugo.
Hugo, that's right.
Yeah.
Never mind.
Durant, a lot of the kids I went to school with would go to college in Durant because there's a college over there. It's like 50 miles from Hugo. And I was just up in your neck of the woods, a month ago. I was in Oklahoma City. My son was graduating from OU.
Oh yeah. My daughter's at OU. That's really cool.
All right, so we're
City
7:30
manager
on
of
this.
the city manager of Durant wants me to help her with I guess they're putting a big data center down there.
Oh yeah, well they're gonna have to put in a lot more.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know where this is going to end up, but that just voracious growth there.
They're asking all these communities to sign these contracts, these utility companies are, and she's like, we don't want to sign anything because we have no idea what this means for us. Like, and I was like, you don't have a city attorney? Like, but they're gonna come down there and try to eat up a lot of the energy, available energy. So
Yeah. Okay, so this segment looks a little boring. I'm going to start with a question about misconceptions that you're dealing with. I think we could talk for a minute on that. Because then I get into regulatory changes and infrastructure refining. And so that's people's eyes may glaze over a little bit there. But I think misconceptions are always interesting. I wrote about the Toyota water car on Forbes the other day, and that's gotten a lot of traffic. I mean, those debunking articles get a lot of traffic. So I think misconceptions are always popular. So, all right, let's segment 4, 7 minutes, 30 seconds. Here we go. Welcome back to the Energy Mixx Radio. I'm Robert Rapier with this week's guest, Matt Randolph. Matt, I wanted to ask you kind of what energy misconceptions you're dealing with right now. What do you see coming up more often than not?
a lot of people think that we are drilling a lot more because gas prices have fallen year over year from where they were. I think today they're about 25 cents a gallon cheaper than they were a year ago today. So they believe that drill baby drill is in, full effect and it's going on. That's certainly not the case. That's just a product of lower oil prices and uncertainty in the economy. A lot of people think the real funny one, we changed the Gulf of Mexico to Gulf of America to get rid of Joe Biden's drilling ban. That's one of the funniest ones to me because, as you know, that drilling ban off the west coast of Florida has been there for decades, and nothing has really stopped in the Gulf of Mexico. Those are the two main ones. A lot of people think, I've had people tell me the Keystone XL has been opened.
Yeah.
That's another piece of misinformation that's floating around. I think those are the main three. Just sort of the same old classic historical misinformation type stuff that we've always dealt with.
Now, it's always funny to me when people come at you or me with absolute confidence about something that is absolutely wrong. I remember a guy who said, I'm an engineer and I can tell you they're shipping tar sands as is down the pipeline and then exporting that. And I said, how do you think tar sands are going down a pipeline? And he was very insulting but he was completely wrong. That's not how they ship it. But I get that stuff all the time. And it's always, people can be wrong and I don't mind, correcting people, but it's those that are just absolutely confident that come at you that are always crack me up.
Yeah, that's a big one. The we don't need Canadian oil is a big one. And I just tell them, I'm like, well, technically we don't, but you're going to pay more for your gas if we don't import it. Like,
right.
I know you won't be happy about that. There's a lot of Canada stuff.
Well, has the nature of misinformation changed with the new administration? Are you seeing anything different? I would say sometimes the administration says things, and so did the Biden administration. So I think the stuff you're dealing with, maybe Biden was over talking renewables, and Trump may be over talking, coal or oil, and so there's some misinformation in both cases that originated, I think, with the administration.
Oh, for sure. Joe Biden said we weren't drilling after we had doubled rig count. Donald Trump says gas is $1.98. That's obviously not a thing. Today it's $3.20 on a national average. I think at the time it was around $3.12 or $3.13 on it wasn't $1.98 anywhere is the point. And that's just what you get with administrations. They just say whatever they got to say, knowing people will believe it, but yeah, there's a lot of misconception. Just the other day, Donald Trump said gas prices are lower because of drill baby drill, just a complete falsehood. There's simply nothing at all true about that. So, but that comes with politics, I guess.
Yeah. So let's talk about, there's been a lot of executive orders aimed at deregulation. Have any of these filtered down to your company? Are you seeing deregulation, and is that affecting your day-to-day operations at all?
It's not affecting me personally in any way or my company. I think the biggest area where we're going to see, and I don't know if it's so much about deregulation as it is just pushing it more, the LNG business. If you look at the current investments flowing into the industry, it's really concentrated around LNG and technology. Investments are going to be dropping. They're dropping in the oil exploration and production space, but they're rising rapidly in LNG and technology. The biggest, I would say, benefactor of the Trump administration is going to be the natural gas business and the liquefied natural gas business. They are quickly expediting approvals for permits for export and new terminals. They're trying to pull the thing off up in Alaska. I don't know if that's going to go or not. I think ultimately these projects have to be profitable for people to invest in them. And if they haven't done it in the last 30 years, I don't know why they would do it today. But we'll see. I think, definitely the benefactors of Trump are LNG. I think technology happens either way, but not so much the oil space, but the natural gas space. And I think everyone's bullish on natural gas just because the amount we're going to export in the future, that we plan to triple current exports, which is a massive amount. And we'll just have to see what happens there.
And with the AI data centers, I'm really bullish on natural gas prices. I don't see how they can go down much from here, but I've been wrong about that before. I mean, demand has grown, but production growth has kept pace. So natural gas prices have remained in check, which it's been surprising to me. So really nothing different from you from an operational standpoint with the new administration.
No, not really.
Okay. So I'm going to ask you something. This is like to me a Bigfoot sightings. People ask me about new refinery construction. Are we building a new refinery? Where are we building a new refinery? What's the status? Anything going on in refining?
Not that I'm aware of. I've been closely tracking this new refinery. They're supposedly going to build in Oklahoma for the last 4 years, and it's at this point I think it's dead in the water, and they just don't want to say so. But refining is the toughest, I believe, the single toughest business in this industry overall, and I think it's the most difficult to get investment dollars. People don't want to put their money there. There's better places to put their money. And even if with massive deregulation of refineries, I don't think that helps that much. I don't think it causes people to say, okay, let's dump billions of dollars into refineries. We do know that apparently, some countries in the Middle East are going to pour a bunch of money into infrastructure. Saudi Aramco, they're going to apparently expand the refinery there in Freeport. That's the one thing I've heard. As far as new refineries, I haven't heard anything, but a lot of investment dollars flowing into infrastructure, basically gas pipelines and LNG terminals. Just not a ton happening on the refining side.
Okay, and that's my impression as well. I get asked about it all the time, and I say I'll believe it when they start putting steel in the ground and concrete in the ground.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll take a quick break right there and be back with our final segment with Matt Randolph on the Energy Mixx Radio Show. Okay, so in this last segment, I'm gonna give you a chance to talk about your Substack and about all your stuff and what's going on. Let me see if I'm gonna, yeah. So I'll pull down a question in case I need to, but I'm gonna lead this segment off by giving you a chance to advertise all your goings on. I saw your YouTube has, I mean, it's approaching 100,000 subscribers, isn't it? That's pretty good.
Yeah. I wish it would go faster, but people tell me that's pretty fast for YouTube. It's really hard to build.
Oh yeah, because I think the last time I looked, I think it was significantly lower than that. I mean, it's grown a lot since the last time I looked.
Yeah, it was probably 10,000 at the beginning of the year. So.
That's what I was thinking. I didn't want to say
Yeah.
that. I was thinking it was down around 12 or 13,000, and now I looked at it today and went, oh wow. But you're putting out a lot of videos, and you're also talking a lot of politics. So I think that's a way to drive engagement. I mean, people are more interested in politics than they are in energy. But
I kind of ran out of stuff to talk about with oil and gas.
Well,
I didn't. For a long time, I'm like, I'm not going to talk about politics, and then it's like, man, I just kind of have to because you can only talk about oil and gas so long.
I know some of these guys with huge followings. I just talk about politics all the time. That's what they do. And I think that's probably a way to build a big audience, but I don't want to go there. I
don't blame you. It's rough.
Yeah. Okay. So coming in for the last segment here, 8 minutes, 20 seconds. Here we go. Welcome back to Energy Mixx Radio. I'm Robert Rapier with this week's guest, Matt Randolph. Matt, in this segment, I want to talk a little bit about, what you're doing, your mission to educate people. I know that you launched a Substack and you continue to expand your platform. What's driving you to educate people about energy and how has your approach evolved?
Well, it's really, the reason I got started was just because there was so much misinformation about our industry, as you know. It's the
same reason I got involved. Exact same reason I got involved 20 years ago.
And like I told, like I spoke about the other day, it's because the industry itself is largely secretive. They don't like to talk about this stuff, and that's because it's historically a very litigious industry, so they try to keep everything quiet. And that means everything people know about the industry is filtered through politicians and the media, which means it's wrong, right? If you're hearing something about our industry from politicians or the media, there's a 99% chance it's going to be wrong. So my goal was to just educate and inform people. And that's kind of morphed into also being an advocate for oil and gas workers and energy workers in general. And that's part of the public speaking I'm doing now is sort of advocating for those people because, like I told you earlier, we've lost 30% of the oil and gas workforce in Oklahoma in the last few years during a time of prosperity. And that's because of technology and efficiency and just all the things that are happening. We can drill a well now in 2 weeks that used to take, when I broke out in drilling, it would take us a year to drill that well. We couldn't drill that well. We didn't even have the capability of drilling that well. But that's what I'm saying is this goes so fast, and then you have so much technology displacing workers that we're going to have to find something for those people to do. We're going to retrain them, teach them the technology or the AI, send them to some kind of schools. So the labor force, as you know, in the oil and gas industry has shrunk significantly over the past 20 years, and it's going to continue to do so. Regardless of our energy demand and how much energy we produce, the labor force is going to continue to shrink. And a lot of these people are they're laborers. They're people that didn't go to college. They're people that went out and got a job and they're making really good money. And I feel like my concern is they're going to be left out in the cold, right? In a state like Oklahoma, where 22% of your GDP is from oil and gas, and I can't remember the percentage of Oklahomans that are oil and gas workers, but they make 2.5 times the average salary of an Oklahoman. And we have over 100,000 oil and gas workers in the state. That's a massive blow to a state economy if you lose half of your workers in the highest paying industry of the state. So becoming more and more of an advocate for those workers and trying to figure out ways to help them is another one of my goals. So I'm on YouTube. Mr. Global YouTube is the handle. I'm on Substack under Matt Randolph or Mr. Global 2. I'm on every social media platform. You'll either find me under Mr. Global or Matt Randolph.
Right. Yeah, I found you on most of those. We cross paths now and then.
And there's a lot of fakes out there. So if you follow,
I know.
And if I message you and you follow me and I message you and ask you about an oil and gas investment or anything like that, it's not me. It is not me. Do not respond.
Yeah, I tell people that too. I've had people get scammed out of a lot of money by people using my name and face, and I've had to come out and tell people, this is not me. So, when I started doing this about 20 years ago, my approach initially was very confrontational. I was very in your face. I was calling out the fraudsters and the scammers. And I did that for a few years and it was good for engagement. But I remember one time I did that with a company, a publicly traded company that I thought was going to go bankrupt. And I entitled the article Dead Man Walking. And I got calls from the Department of Energy who was funding them. I got calls from the company. I got calls from investors. And at that point, I said, I've got to lighten up here and not be quite so flippant. And I say that because I'm wondering about your approach. If your approach has changed since you started doing this, because I definitely mellowed mine out because you do alienate people when you get in their face like that. And I try to be more engaging now than I once was. I still don't mind being confrontational or just calling out, stupidity when I see it, but I've kind of mellowed and I'm wondering about your approach.
I think my approach is mellowing. It sounds like I'm probably going through maybe a similar process that you went through back in those days. I started off very aggressive. A lot of that aggression, though, was coming from people attacking me, and I felt like I needed to defend myself. I'm much more engaging, and I would rather have more civil discussion every day than to argue back and forth with people. One thing I noticed that I'm doing is I'm responding less to agitators. Which, if you know me at all, is very hard for me to do because there's nothing that gets me going more than arguing with some agitator, some idiot. I'll just say it, right? There's nothing that gets me more than arguing with those people. But I maybe it's because I'm getting older, maybe it's because I'm tired, but I'm definitely going in the direction that you went. I'm getting less combative, less confrontational. I do still respond occasionally to agitators, maybe out of boredom. I don't know. But the one thing I love about local politics and speaking locally and being off the internet is everyone's goal is the same and no one cares about your politics. And you're just sitting around having discussions about how to solve problems. And that's my favorite thing to do. It's, as you know, the real world is much different than the internet. And so I can stand in a room in Oklahoma, in the reddest state in the country, with the farthest right Republicans and with some Democrats, and we can all talk and have a great, amazing discussion about how we're going to help a group of people or how we're going to help an industry. And politics does not come up. And that's why I'm moving towards doing more of that, because it's actually constructive. And if you're not being constructive, what are you doing? So,
Right. So we've got about a
I
minute
like
and a
your
half.
shutters, by the way.
I just unblurred them because I told you before, it's funny. We have the exact same shutters. So listeners obviously can't see this, but Matt and I can see each other, and we have the exact same wood shutters behind both of us. So that is kind of funny. But so we've got about a minute left. I wanted to ask you, how do you balance your role in your company as senior executive with your social media stuff? What does a day in your life look like?
Well, so I've largely stepped away from my company, actually. We hired a big time engineer to come in and take over a lot of the duties that I was doing. Because after now 34 years in the industry, I was just like, man, I'm tired. I'm burnt out. And I think someone can do this better than me because it's not getting the attention that it needs. So I've largely stepped away from that. I've retained my ownership in the company, obviously. And, we're still doing all the things we were doing before. So there's not a ton of balance there to really be concerned about. I got in there and I built it to a point, and we basically 10x'd the company. And now, we're all of the partners that originally started the company have done this. We have all said, it's time for us to step away, bring in some younger people, fresh people, new ideas. And with our guidance, let them kind of grow and build the company because our senior partner, he's approaching 75 years old, and he's been in this industry since he was 18. So
Yeah.
He's tired. I'm tired. So all of us are largely stepping away and backing off a little bit and kind of handing the reins over to people with new energy and new blood. So.
Okay. Well, I appreciate that. I appreciate you coming on the show again. That's all the time we have. But as always, fascinating topics, fascinating discussion. I want to thank this week's guest, Matt Randolph, and hopefully we'll have you on again soon, Matt.
Absolutely. Anytime. Thanks for having me.